This is the part when we go like this, Gerard.
So welcome everyone to WYD Rocks, a collaboration between worldyouthday.com and WYDcentral.org. I'm Dario Mobini, joined by my good friend Deacon Pedro, all the way from Toronto, Canada. And today's episode, you guys are in for a treat. We have someone all the way from the country of Ireland, the beautiful country of Ireland, Gerard Gallagher, who has a extensive amount of World Youth Day experience to share with us a little bit about his experience of last week's gathering in Lisbon for all the conference leaders. Gerard, thank you for joining us yet again for
Gerard,
this.
Gerard is the most quoted person on this show. You must know, Gerard, that every episode, at least 2 or 3 times, we say, like Gerard Gallagher says, just do it. That's the quote.
Yeah.
That's the quote.
Yeah. I don't get any copyright for that or royalties.
No, you don't. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Nike does. Nike gets the copyright.
Very good. Yeah. So let's just do it then, you know? So.
Yeah,
let's just do it.
So how did you get involved in this conference leaders gathering? Tell us a little bit about how that started for you.
I suppose it's an invitation that goes out every 2 or 3 years to the organizers of World Youth Day from host countries, home countries, movements and whatever. I was in Panama. So the way we work in Ireland is whoever was at the previous World Youth Day, 1 or 2 people will take the lead. And I took the lead in Panama. And then we were part of the review of what happened in Panama. And then this is the preparatory meeting for the next World Youth Day, which should have been last year, but it's going to be next year. And so there was 2 of us went from Ireland, myself and James McLaughlin. James had never been at one of these meetings before. So hopefully handing over some of the experience from one of the elders to one of the rookies.
Yeah. So Gerard, normally after a World Youth Day, there are actually 2 preparatory meetings. One usually takes place in Rome. It's kind of a bit of a review. And then the next one takes place in the host country. That did not happen this time around.
Actually, no, it did happen. It actually happened by Zoom because COVID had kicked in. So we did an international preparatory meeting from Rome, but at home.
Okay, I see. So that happened.
None of us traveled. None of us traveled. We all got a short straw. So
yeah. And anyway, Panama was so good there was nothing to review. So it was a short meeting, right?
Over in 10 minutes, you know, and a very low carbon footprint, you know.
Speaking of carbon footprint, I heard there's going to be a lot of amazing initiatives at this World Youth Day. Am I correct here that they're going to try to make this completely carbon neutral?
There's a couple of thematic kind of themes going through this. One is the Laudato Si kind of, how do you roll it out? So, you know, even at the meeting, you know, interestingly, when you go to these international meetings, you get a lot of takeaways and freebies and whatever. There was hardly any because everything's kind of on an app or digital. So we have very little to bring back. Everything is digital. So that's the first. And I think that's going to be a symptom of, or not a symptom, it's going to be a reality as we go forward. Everything will be digital. And actually, a lot of the program will be digital. There'll be no little food vouchers. It'll be a SCART code on your phone. So they're really rolling out a lot of logistics behind this digital. The second part theme that came across a lot of it was synodality. That whole kind of concept that, you know, the wider church is grappling with, but we're experts. We've already had a youth synod. So it's kind of how do you roll out the youth and the synod and bring that forward with the bishops. So that's going to be kind of new territory as well. Yeah,
interesting. Can I just go back to the the neutral Laudato Si part, which sounds fascinating, but I presume that all of the World Youth Day experts that were there at the meeting last week could have expressed some concerns. Are there some concerns about how that's going to actually in practice work?
They didn't give us a lot of detail, Pedro, in terms of how it would actually work. But we know the nature of the scale of World Youth is such a massive event. It's hard to kind of green the whole thing. You know, that there will be an element of where they just have to do things as well. Like the very first green event I went to was in this Loreto, North Italy, about 10 years ago, and they gave us little wind-up phone chargers, and you know, everything was sustainability. So I think from the various sites, I think they're going to try and have them fairly much sustainability. You know, kind of green the event, and you know, recycling options as well. But it's hard when you have such a large group of people.
It is, and because Dario and I were talking about this last week about it. I mean, we assume that most young people that will be going to a World Youth Day have a cell phone,
right?
And we assume that they are thinking of having some sort of connectivity or data. But is that something that the committee is prepared to make sure to provide? that there's
they're intending to have an awful lot of material through your smartphone. However, it's a world event. There are people coming from the developing world and from the
yeah
third world. Some of them don't have access to a phone, never mind a smartphone. So that actually will be an international challenge for how do you relay information to some young people who can't afford some phones. There was a suggestion from one delegate internationally, could we, send some smartphones to Lisbon and have them distributed. We could be creative, but actually it will be a challenge because not everybody will have the data. When you bring 1 million people to a city of just 1 million people, the tech could be the weakest part of the whole project. And we
Yeah.
did try to point that out as well, because if they're completely relying on an online system, that can crash.
yeah
I
yeah
mean, if you remember Madrid, when they had this, the phones were, we were still texting with, like, pressing the number more than a couple times to get the right letter, but they had no way of communication because all the data towers, anything that was sending
yeah
messages back and forth, was completely broken down, and so they didn't even know if they could even, a lot of people who showed up didn't even know that they couldn't get in because
yeah
it was
mind you yeah
the communication was an
So,
issue.
so
and that
like
was 10 years ago yeah
Yeah,
and that was
that's
10
right.
years ago. So one of the things for feeding people at the event will be done through a little SCAR code. You go to a shop, you go to a restaurant, or wherever you go to get your food. But the reality is that system hasn't been tested.
No.
And you don't have your first pilot test at the real event.
yeah
So
no
so that would be a concern, and that was actually raised because you still have to feed everybody, and everybody will want food.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting. I mean, there was a concern I remember in Panama that because the infrastructure, we thought, there's no way if there's 500, 200, 300,000 young people all of a sudden trying to connect to the internet.
Oof.
Thankfully, in Panama, we didn't have I think there were only 90,000 pilgrims that came to Panama, so it did not strain the system. But you could have 500,000, 600,000 registering for Lisbon. That's common in a European World Youth Day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. So they're trying to get a lot of the young people using their social media feeds as well. So hopefully, that'll generate a certain trend when we're over there. But again, you need smart technology for that to work.
Right.
Yeah.
I noticed that they also are accepting social media influencers as like media organizers. So it's, we have the media, and then there's social media influencers that are going to be included now into that. I'm curious at how that infrastructure is going to look because yes, it will be a very interesting situation to connect. And if you're going to a live stream, and Pedro and I know what it takes to do a live stream is hard, but to do so on your phone at a PayPal event is almost impossible. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine what everybody's doing the same thing.
So there's probably going to be two types of media. There's going to be the official accredited media, and then there's going to be the unofficial kind of young church kind of media.
Right.
But interestingly, now I don't use TikTok, but they did have a concern that they haven't got onto TikTok because I think there's not a relationship between Church China and TikTok.
Mm.
So there was just a little reservation. They didn't explain it, but you kind of read between the lines.
Yeah, interesting. Now, to your next point about synodality,
Yeah.
I think that I hope that most people that are watching kind of have a sense of what that means. But how would that kind of work in the context of a World Youth Day? Did they explain that?
Well, they didn't explain it. They've actually programmed it and in the following. So if you actually understand synodality as walking together, that
Yeah.
kind of common vision. So the catechesis, which would have traditionally been a bishop speaking through a microphone to people, that has flipped now. So it's now called Rise Up. And
Wow.
there's an invitation now for young people to present or talk or give kind of some kind of testimony. And then not just one bishop, but a number of bishops. So that's the synodality will respond. But the lead is actually taken by the young person, and the response is through the listening eyes or ears of the bishops. That's a big change.
Interesting. So it's the bishop listening to the young people more so than young people listening to the bishop. That is a big change. What was the sense from the delegates that were at the meeting last week? What was the sense
I think
response
it was
to that?
very positive, Pedro, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think it's a positive. So if you actually go back to Christus Vivat and Pope Francis tells young people not to be bystanders, here
Yeah.
now they're protagonists. They're actually not bystanding. The bishops have to be the bystander. So that's a good conversation to have. How
Yeah.
it will work, how you select these young people. Can we be creative? Can we be edgy? can we bring some of the young people from the ages into these conversations? I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, so then that just to clarify for people who might be watching that maybe are not familiar, we're talking about catechesis. So they're usually traditionally 2 days, or it used to be 3 days, where
Hmm.
bishops would do a catechesis, a teaching on a particular theme, and pilgrims are scheduled into sessions, catechesis sessions, where they get to speak. And for a lot of young people, that's maybe the first time that they hear a bishop speak or even see a bishop, and then it concludes with mass. So that's what Gerard is talking about. So that it wouldn't be the emphasis on the bishop speaking so much as it would be the young people getting a chance to be listened to by the bishops. That is a huge shift.
And I
Absolutely.
love the
So
fact that you also are able to hear the bishop contribute to the young person's response. I mean, the young person is going to be sharing their story, and the bishop gets to hear it and then be able to respond to it so that way we can walk together. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. I mean, I love the concept of rise up. It's such a beautiful occasion. How does that connect then to the Marian theme of like make haste? Did it give you like an idea how that will lead
well, they give us
into
a
that?
they give us a kind of a theme for each day, okay? So which I thought was quite creative because I was looking at the Mary Rose with Haste and kind of trying to see how you would program pastorally for that. So, for
Hmm.
example, on Sunday, or the Monday, the first opening day, which would be the Monday or the Tuesday, they have the word ready. So
Tuesday,
the second day, the 1st of August, will have set. The
Mm.
Monday.
Wednesday will be go, Thursday will be rejoice, Friday is believe, Saturday is give thanks, and Sunday is the missioning of rise up.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I
Mm.
So
like
they've been
that.
quite as clever and creative. So, for example, if you're speaking on Wednesday, you have one word probably to reflect on,
Yeah.
but it's also connected to scripture as well and to that
Yeah.
passage.
Now, does that mean that they've changed the structure? Because traditionally there's an opening masses on the Tuesday and
Right.
events officially start on Wednesday. People are just arriving on Monday. Some people don't even arrive till Tuesday.
Yeah, I think these are just words to frame the day. So whether it's
Okay.
the opening ceremony or the way of the cross or the final mass, there's a word that'll thematically generate or program for the day.
Right. I like that. I like that. That's good.
Again,
That's
it's
good.
clever, you know. So
It is very clever. Now, were there any other announcements or anything that was not expected that were made last week?
and not particularly different. The rest of it follows the normal routine of World Youth Day in terms of that. We were showing around some of the venues as well. There's three principal venues, if I can talk to that.
Yes,
Um,
actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
please do.
Lisbon is a really historic city. Okay, it's so Vasco da Gama. It's the city where people left Europe to discover the New World effectively. So there's a kind of a lot of linkage of history and related to that. So so there's three different places that we will gather. One is the Parque Eduardo. It's a big, long city kind of park. It's where Pope John Paul would have said mass when he was in Lisbon, and so they have a lot of national and state events in it. That's a big park for the opening ceremony, for the arrival of Pope Francis, and for the Way of the Cross. And then over near kind of one of the areas near the sea, Lisbon is on a port kind of city. So kind of near that, they're going to have a City of Joy. So it's the Reconciliation Park and also the Vocations Fair.
Mm.
And then the third space is the vigil site, effectively. I won't give you the Portuguese word, but it's literally the large kind of space where people will gather for the vigil and the mass. And they actually brought us to it, and they've actually started to work in it. It's a piece of reclaimed land. It's near the water. So an elevated piece of land, and they reckon it goes on for about 5 miles, effectively, as far as the eye can see. It's kind of
Mm.
long, narrow, almost probably in similar. I'm trying to give a similar area, probably like Madrid. Kind of would have been a long, narrow kind of area, kind of a channel. Again, it has different elevations. It'll be interesting. But they've begun to build it now. The one word I heard, and this is for maybe for viewers or listeners, is the word mosquito. So so anybody who prepares or plans for World Youth Day, you have to prepare for everything, and one of them is mosquitoes. And I'm a witness because I actually got stung. So
Oh, goodness.
yeah. So again, being Irish, we get all the negatives.
Yes.
So I can testify. Bring your mosquito repellent.
So
Put that in the bag.
not only you get the sunburn, but you get the mosquitoes as well. Goodness
Absolutely. And
gracious.
I'm
Good.
sure that how to say mosquito in Portuguese is probably mosquito.
So that's interesting that they have these three beautiful sites. So the opening mass, the welcoming of the Holy Father, the Via Crucis, all in this one location.
Yep.
And then I know at that beautiful monastery just down towards the water a little bit, the City of Joy is, right? Yeah. And then this final vigil, it's like, I'm amazed that 9 months before World Youth Day is to start, they're already working on it, which is great. Now, they better, right? So do they have a backup plan in case something happens? I'm always, because, I know.
After Rio.
Yeah, absolutely. After Rio, it's like, oh my Lord. Do they have a backup plan? Are they expecting pilgrims to walk to this place?
We invited, the backup plan is they're coming to Ireland. No? No?
I like that.
Why not? Why not?
Ireland is due. Next World Youth Day. There you go. Is that the hint that the next?
Are you telling us something, Gerard? Are you telling us? Did you guys volunteer?
Well, it's the only international event from the Vatican we haven't had. We've had the World Meeting of Families, we've had the Eucharistic Conference.
Yeah,
so we need the 3 in a row at this stage, So
yeah, okay.
No, in terms of backup, in terms of serious, there was no mention of a backup venue. I don't think they're planning for a backup venue. So I think this will work. It's got capacity for multiples of 1+ million, so it has that capacity. So the only weather event in Lisbon is heat. That's the big one. It's a very warm city in the summer.
Be raining.
So unless something else happens, but generally there's never any rain at that kind of time of the year. Just one other thing that actually they did mention when we were there was the registration. So the registration, probably since you made your previous episode, registration is now opened. It opened at the weekend. Pope Francis was the first to register. Yes. That's always a symbolic moment. So the key thing is that there is registrations now open. So parishes, groups, dioceses, movements can all apply in different methods. Small groups or very, very large groups. We did hear the number of something like 25,000 are coming from the United States. There's a very high interest in Australia. A lot of countries where youth ministry or young adult ministry hasn't really come back to the same level than what it was. They're beginning to find that World Youth Day is kind of attractive now as a restart moment. So that's a positive. So the registration hopefully will trigger positivity for gatherings of young people in parishes and cities and areas and dioceses.
Yeah, that's great. So so people, we did mention this last week at Lisboa, 2023.org is the website. People can go there. All the information is there already. You can click on register, although that's probably more concerning group leaders rather than individuals. You can go as an individual, but it's not recommended. Go with a group.
Yes, and talk to your diocesan director, talk to your parish priest to see what you can do to find a group, because it's important to do that.
Gerard, did they mention anything about how the days in the diocese is going to work? Is that going to be fairly traditional, or is there anything different there?
It's fairly traditional. I can't remember the exact number of dioceses in Portugal, but every diocese is acting as a host diocese other than Lisbon. But there will be young people gathering. For example, there's some of the Irish are going to Porto, which is about 2-3 hours away. So you can so there's some islands off Portugal as well. You can kind of go to them, so every diocese has some kind of welcome invitation. We were actually staying in Fatima, and Fatima, while it's kind of supporting the World Youth Day, a lot of young people will stay there. There's a lot of accommodation there. So they're not running a parallel program, but they will have programmed activities for young people before World Youth Day and also during World Youth Day as well.
Yeah, I presume everybody's going to schedule a stopover in Fatima.
In some way. So they have a huge logistic kind of challenge of getting everybody in and out of Fatima and back into Lisbon. So we haven't seen the full transport plan, but I believe they're already sourcing coaches in France and further afield as well. So they're really reaching out to their neighboring countries as well.
Right. They probably didn't share this with you, but are there any rumblings about the Pope making a stopover in Fatima while he's in Lisbon?
There was nothing shared, but I would read between the lines that the Pope will go. That's what I would read into it. It would be fairly much unprecedented for him to go to a country that has an apparition space or place and not visit. Even when he was in Ireland, he went to Knock.
Yeah, exactly.
He has a huge devotion to Our Lady. So I would almost anticipate, and it's not breaking any confidence, but I'd almost anticipate the Pope will be in Fatima at some point.
Yeah, that's what we figured in Rio. He went to Aparecida, and yes, absolutely. And that would happen while he's in Rio. Sorry,
No,
while
no.
he's in Lisbon, but outside of the official World Youth Day program, likely,
Yeah.
probably on the
And
Wednesday.
maybe for listeners to know that apart from his attendance at World Youth Day, there would be other events that take place in the Pope's schedule. For example, he would always meet the religious. It's never a planned event, but he would
Yep.
meet young religious and contemplatives. He would meet various dignitaries and various kind of fringe groups effectively. So could be young people who are homeless or prisoners. So
Yes.
these are not official events, but they actually take part kind of quietly behind the official program.
Yeah,
Because even though it's a World Youth Day, it's still a state visit as
it's still a
well.
state visit. Yeah.
I
Well,
had a question.
we're all about planning papal visits over here.
I have a quick question regarding the backpack. Did they give you guys like a little
Oh,
glimpse
yeah.
of the backpack? Did you get to
No,
see
we saw nothing. Did I?
nothing?
No.
No swag. You didn't get any swag while you were there?
Did I not
No,
tell you
everything's
that?
digital.
Everything's digital. It's probably going to be an app
It's
in
going to
your
be a
pocket.
digital backpack.
Lord have mercy. So
A digital backpack.
digital. Can you imagine having digital water while you're at it too? I mean,
You know what? There's something to say about not giving a backpack if you want to save, waste. There's
Yeah.
something about that, and or even maybe encouraging people to bring backpacks from previous World Youth Days.
ooh,
That would be
that'd
kind of
be
a fun
kind of
thing.
cool to see
Everybody
if they
bringing
still
home,
have them.
yeah, and then maybe exchange them or something. And
I
that
probably
way
need a
we're.
wheelbarrow. I probably need a wheelbarrow, to hold
Oh,
on.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I
yeah.
think I have a.
Yeah.
But
You
you know,
probably have more than all of us together. Yeah.
Pedro's saying that because he still has Toronto backpacks literally clogging
I
his
actually
closet.
do. Actually, Gerard, if you want another Toronto back, I have a box. I think there's 50 in the box.
Oh,
Just sitting.
jeez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Okay.
awesome.
Okay,
Ger- Ger-
cool.
Gerard, what would be like one takeaway that you had from this meeting about World Youth Day in and of itself? The
No,
fact that it's coming very soon.
it's a very young team of people planning this World Youth Day. Very young, and I don't mean inexperienced, but they will rely on experienced people to support and help them along the way. If any of us who have been at another World Youth Day gives them a suggestion, they actually listen, and they take it on board. So it's great for them to kind of hear experience and kind of match that in. The thing I take away from it is it's kind of almost it's not an Irish thing or a Latino thing, but they're probably not as prepared up front as they normally would be, So there's an element, it'll all fall into place towards the end. And I think
Yeah.
that's the character of some of these events as well. There's a lot of lastminute.com planning. So we make an act of faith in them, and because they are working hard behind the scenes, and but they will learn and they do listen. It's a beautiful country, absolutely stunning country. I have to say that. And you can go and do the Fatima, or you can go and do a Camino beforehand, or there's many, many different cities in and around kind of Lisbon worth visiting. There's two neighboring dioceses. There's a place called Cassis they brought us out to on the coast, absolutely stunning. So I actually think
Mm.
culturally it'll be a very, very rich World Youth Day.
Awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And what about the food? I'm curious, like, what was your thought of the food? Because that's always been my biggest concern. You go to World Youth Day, you go to a different country, you get the food quality is not the same, and it's different styles. I mean, what is it like in Lisbon, the food?
Well, first of all, the food culture in Portugal is very high. They would eat a lot of fish. So that will appeal to some people. They have a very high standard of food. My concern probably trumps your concern, Dario, because I'm a celiac. So
Oh,
I always kind of
yes.
wonder how you can fit into these programs whenever,
Sure.
they're all eating pastries and eating kind of breads, and everybody said the
Sure.
bread is lovely here. And I said, well, I can't get any, I can't eat any. So these would be concerns that I'd have around food, but I wouldn't be worried about the food. There would be plenty of options. It's a coastal city, so a lot of the food will be fresh.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But as you said, the idea is that they're doing what has been done in a lot of recent World Youth Days is that the meals are done through local vendors or restaurants, and you're saying through
Yes.
an app.
So
there
you
will,
can kind of go in and grab a bottle of something on a sandwich or whatever. So you can go to supermarkets
yes,
or you can go to a restaurant. So that template actually works. And
yeah,
again, it'll be a digital app system. That's the only concern. But the reality is when you have a lot of outlets, then there's a lot of variety.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Pilgrim menu. Yeah,
But they also have McDonald's as well for those that are coming from America.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
That was the World Youth Day of McDonald's of '93. How can we forget that World Youth Day? Oh, but it's exciting to see that the meeting has occurred, that everybody who went back is excited, and the fact that registration is now open and people are registering. Groups have started registering. I got a couple emails from people that are wondering about volunteer registration, which we're going to be hitting
it's
on
open too. Yeah.
future episode. But it's exciting. So did they give you the numbers of like what they expect, like numbers of people that expect to come, numbers of people that are expect to volunteer, or did they just say?
They didn't give us exact numbers, but I kind of read between the lines. If the venue for the final mass holds around 1 million, then they're expecting 1 million in that kind of number. But there isn't 1 million residents in Lisbon. There's only 750,000 residents in Lisbon, as far as I can tell. So we're going to double the capacity of the city. So that will bring pressure to transport and all kinds of infrastructures as well. So it's a small, compact city. It's got a very good metro system and trams and buses and whatever. But when you bring in the multiples of World Youth Day, that becomes a challenge as well. But it's stunning. They told us it's a great city to walk around. So
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not big. Yeah.
and 40 degrees heat and lots of hills. So
And here's one question which I got from a viewer and wanted to know, like, did they bring up any kind of COVID discussion up? 1 million people. We're still living in post-COVID times. I mean, did they say anything about the possibility of like a concern or worry that maybe you might not get countries who have a stringent process versus countries who kind of laxed? Did they say anything about the concern, or is that now to the point where everybody should be responsible for themselves?
the question was raised, and it was raised at a very high vocal level about exactly what you just said. And the response was they will follow the government health protocol. And currently there are no restrictions in Lisbon, but we don't know what the winter is going to be like in Europe. We don't know what it's going to be like in the summer. So again, they didn't answer the question. They just gave a formal, straight answer that public health is open in Lisbon and vaccinations are there. But again, I think the concern that you have when you're bringing such a vast group of people from the universal world, and there are people coming from poorer countries where there aren't any vaccines, or people who have chosen not to have them,
Right.
then I think people need to take some personal responsibility around that.
Yeah, and I guess every country that is sending pilgrims, especially the Episcopal conferences, might have suggestions or even restrictions surrounding who gets to go and what those parameters are. I have a question, Gerard, about accommodation. Are they doing the usual host families, schools, parishes, that kind of thing for simple accommodation?
So for listeners, the World Youth Day accommodation is very simple. It stays with families or whatever. So that is a very strong option for people. There is a pressure point with commercial accommodation, so hotels or hostels. It would appear the industry, not the organizers, but it would appear that the hotel industry has blocked a lot of the beds. Obviously, they're going to gazump people with very high costs later. So the attractive option is the homestay, staying with people's homes, gyms, whatever. We did raise a question around safeguarding. I'll just say that to your listeners. We made a very strong point on this as well, that they have a lot of work to do around the protocols of safeguarding for minors and for vulnerable adults whenever they stay in communal kind of areas. So we are some of the elder group, if I use that kind of group term, people who have lots of experience of the World Youth is we're helping and advising and maybe giving them some suggestions for protocol on that to have a very high standard and good practice, so that if you are staying in a gym or a family, that the highest standards that we would expect are also matched over there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is important.
And you said it's a city of 1 million. It's not a big city. Is it expected that pilgrims will be having to stay outside of the city and there's transportation in?
I think you're going to be looking at, you could be commuting an hour or more.
An hour.
An hour or plus, like Fatima is about 90 minutes away from Lisbon. It doesn't have a direct train, so you'd be coaching it. So it'll be important where they locate the parishes or the dioceses nearby. There are 2 neighbor dioceses. They're not very big, but they're very close, and they're collaborating with Lisbon as well. So it could be the case that it's probably like Rome. There would be a lot of commuting from the periphery into the center. You only have to come in for certain core events, the opening, the arrival of the Pope, and the Friday and Saturday. So, but most of your catechesis or your local events will be
near where you're staying.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's great. Wow. So there's a lot of information you shared with us, Gerard, which is going to be great for us to process. But the most important thing is the excitement that is coming from the conference leaders and those who attended this event. And now that registration is open, get registered, find your local parish, local diocesan director, and see what they're providing for you. This is the time to do so. And now the World Youth Day Committee is giving some great resources and great tools to get you started. And with the Feast of Christ the King fastly approaching, this is a great opportunity as well to, if you have not started preparing spiritually for this event, that this is the time you do so. We're out of time, fellas. Right now, looking at our clock here, but wonderful conversation here today with our good friend and our from Ireland, Gerard Gallagher, who joins us in giving us a little insight on what he experienced in Lisbon in his days that he was there. Look, we have many episodes coming as well that are going to interest you guys on, especially volunteers, getting ready for specific things that you need to take in consideration. All of that and more in the future episodes. And again, if any comments you guys may have or questions, please leave them in the comment chat box on the bottom of this video so that we can address them as well. Gerard, thank you for joining us. It's such a blessing to finally see your face and see that smile.
Yes, it's good to see you. And if people are hesitating still, I know what Gerard would tell you.
Just do it.
Do
it. Did I tell you a funny story? I think we have a bit of time to tell you a funny story. There's a second Gerard Gallagher. Okay, he's a priest from Scotland. Okay, he was at the event. But for about the last 20 years, the Holy See have been confused with two Gerard Gallaghers. They thought it was one person just morphed into two. But actually, I have a fantastic photograph of this guy.
You finally met him.
We finally met him. We've never been at the same event at the same time. So I got his accommodation, which was more plush than the lay people. The lay people were in kind of very much basic accommodation. So I didn't tell him. So he was very charitable. So there are two Gerard Gallaghers, one in Scotland and one in Ireland. So that's a miscellaneous.
I love you guys.
Maybe, Dario, maybe we should invite that other guy to see if he's any good.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that in Lisbon. We'll invite the other Gerard Gallagher in there. We want to see who the other one is, what he has to bring to the table.
Do you know what I could say to that? Just do it.
Just do it.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Good. From all of us at worldyouthday.com and WYDcentral.org, thank you for joining us. Until next time, God bless you guys. Stay strong and keep up the faith.